Tell me all about your latest obsession. Are you a fan? Got guilty pleasures? Yeah, your confessions. What the hype? What the hype? Take me from fan stand. What the hype? What the hype? Ooh, what's the hype? Yeah. What the hype?
Welcome back to What the Hype, where this week we're diving into an analysis of Season 4 of The Boys, which just wrapped last week. I'm Laura, and I'm here with Andrew and Eric. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for joining me this evening. You're both up to speed on The Boys Season 4, and I'm so excited to chat with y'all about it.
Yeah, excited to talk about it.
Well, before we get into it, please make sure you're following What the Hype podcast on YouTube so you can see video editions of these episodes and also any exclusive content that we have on the channel. We've been reacting to new episodes of The Boys weekly, and we also have a reaction and analysis of Deadpool and Wolverine coming this weekend. So don't miss out. That's What the Hype podcast on YouTube, and be sure to subscribe to our channel. It helps us out a lot.
Yeah, you can also search for What the Hype podcast in YouTube, by the way. I heard some people asking, how do I find it? Just give it a search if you want.
Yep.
What the Hype podcast. It could be separate words. You don't have to put them all together in the search. But yeah.
Yeah. We also link it on all of our socials from our website. So it's all there. I think before we get into this discussion, I think it's important and probably obvious, but just in case it's not, to give a very significant spoiler warning here. We are going to be dropping spoilers all over the place. We are recapping and analyzing all of season 4 of The Boys. There's probably going to be some spoilers from Gen V that come up, as well as prior seasons. So if you're not up to speed on The Boys and you care about not getting spoiled, this is your warning.
I like that you said, and if you care about getting spoiled, because maybe some people do want to listen and just want to hear us talk about some TV instead of, they don't care if they're spoiled or not. And by the time if you haven't started The Boys, by the time you get to season 4, you might not remember anything we said anyway. So it might not even be a spoiler. None of this might be spoilers.
100%. You're going to hear us talking about characters like The Deep and Tech Knight and Web Weaver and be like, who the hell are these people?
Why are these names so bland?
I am a person who I would listen to discourse on a show I'm not watching just to hear the conversation and be excited for maybe one day watching it.
Well, let's go ahead and get into it. I feel like we can start our conversation really where this season of The Boys begins in a lot of ways, with Homelander's midlife crisis. There's a lot going on with Homelander, aka John, this season. It begins with the pube jar. It kind of began and ended with the pube jar.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's a gross place to start this out, but I think it's important.
Yeah, what's wrong with you, Laura? What the heck?
We watched this man progressively fill up his pube jar throughout the season.
Saying it.
By the way, which he has on a fucking altar with his Nazi girlfriend's wedding photo and Madeline Stillwell's breast milk bottle. What the hell?
Can I argue that the point of the pube hair is that he's going gray?
Yes,
that is the point.
But that is the point. Look, pube hair is gross, but you're like, it's his grays. It's his sign of his mortality.
Let's just
I just
say
mean
the
to bring this
jar.
up because that's what it means to the character. Yes, Homelander's crazy, but that's why he's collecting his pubes. I feel like for anybody that doesn't know.
So in the finale, he looks at the jar, he starts pouring them out, and then he says disgusting to himself. Is he saying what he did was disgusting? What was in the jar was disgusting?
Here's my take on it. He's decided he's not mortal anymore. He's tired of spending any effort on worrying about being mortal. What he does throughout the finale, essentially throwing Victoria under the bus and everything, is all his latest outbreak, his latest lashing out, but he's essentially put that side of him to bed. There were some nice, at least sympathetic moments for him this season, but now he's done with it. He thinks that the idea of him dying is disgusting.
We see this woven throughout the season where he's constantly reminding Ryan that people are just, playthings for their amusement. People are cockroaches, and Homelander seeing any semblance of what could be described as humanity on his person is probably incredibly disgusting to him. So he's in denial about it. I mean, we even see it called out early on in the season when Sage, who's a newly introduced character, says to him, "Hey, I can tell that they're touching up your roots more frequently because your hair is getting darker
Yeah.
as you get older." And it's all of these little like micro moments that I think build up the version of Homelander that we see this season, because his psychosis was already well on its way before season 4. But it really reaches new heights this season. But Eric, you brought up Homelander throwing Victoria Newman under the bus and how that plays into the finale. So this might be a good spot to just quickly go around and share what we thought about the finale, since that was the most recent episode, before we get back into the rest of the analysis.
So the whole finale, I think, takes place more or less on January 6th, which, was pretty heavily telegraphed that it would. But I'm glad that at least in this case, they didn't do sort of what they did at the end of the last season or earlier this season, where they had a mob do most of the killing or like damage, etc. At least this time, it just seemed a lot more controlled, and you knew who the insiders were. There was no like riot strictly. And I like that, because the show doesn't need to show that to make the point that it's already made, I think, and it kept it focused on the characters we know.
I agree with that. I did like the finale overall, and I was expecting more of a riot or a depiction of a riot. But one, I like that they didn't just like do exactly what happened on real January 6th. And two, I think it's still upsetting to a lot of people. That's only a few years ago that happened, and we don't really need to see a depiction of that through The Boys. So I do also like how they handled it. I didn't love how they wrapped up Sage, because it was a little lazy, but we can get into that later.
Anticlimactic?
Yeah, it feels like they didn't think that all the way through.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I definitely have some thoughts I want to share once we chat a little bit more about Sage. But to the January 6th point, I will say I was pleasantly surprised by the way they pulled this off, because Eric, you and I have been on all of these water coolers, and Andrew, you were on a couple too. So like, I've been convinced that we were going to get a full out insurrection, also because there is an insurrection storyline in the comics that I thought that they might leverage a little bit. But I think the kind of eerie thing about this was they didn't need a riot. They didn't need an insurrection, because they pulled off their coup successfully.
Yeah.
The reason we had an insurrection was because they were unable to pull off their coup successfully.
That's the biggest thing. And so when they're going and systematically killing whoever's on the list, that they got that might be people who can leverage against Homelander, etc., that's the kind of thing I think we would see if the fascists had won. And the last January 6th, real January 6th,
real Jan 6.
Yeah. So it's actually kind of scarier to sort of go through the looking glass, go through the mirror into the world where like that's a victory there.
Well, bringing it back to Homelander, like I said, he kind of ups the ante this season. He literally confronts his childhood trauma and kills it by going back to Project Odessa and basically wiping out 99% of the lab staff that were working there, where he was experimented on as a child. And I mean, that whole sequence was, I thought it was really well done. It was still hard to watch.
It was hard to watch. That was my main takeaway, because he just knew where he was going with each person, and the unique ways he tortured each of them was really tough.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see, Homelander's human side, in that he feels pain the way a human does, and he had something bad happen to him, but he has sort of a superhuman reply to it and is overpowered in his delivery of, his justice and healing of his pain. And even, earlier with the gray pube jar, throwing it out and seemingly casting aside his mortality. The first post-credits scene, I think only of one, of this finale, had him doing something very human in getting teared up in being presented with Soldier Boy, his father, in the show. So there's a character that, again, is going to humanize, or their relationship will be based on who they are to one another, I think, next season. And so between Homelander and Ryan, and Homelander and Soldier Boy, you're going to get a lot more human Homelander still, even if he's said that part of him is done.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I don't think Soldier Boy is going to be warm towards Homelander just based on their last interactions.
Yeah. I was going to say, you said he confronted his childhood trauma this season, but he didn't really get rid of all of it because there's Soldier Boy still around.
100%. And I mean, through the processing of his trauma in the perverse way that he did, he's trying to be a better father to Ryan. And early on, we see him saying a lot of the right things, but the execution is very off. So what did you think of the interactions between Ryan and Homelander this season?
I thought it was really interesting to watch because part of you does root for Homelander to be a good father to Ryan because that's what Ryan wants, but he doesn't get it from him. And I do like where things left off by the end of the season, because I think Ryan will ultimately side with Butcher. I think there have been...
You think so?
I think so. I hope so, at least. He will be realizing his mistake in trying to side with Homelander. He did lash out by the end of the season 4 finale. Ryan did. So he got it out of his system. He got the rage out of his system when it comes to Butcher.
Poor Aunt Grace.
Yes.
Yeah. Oof.
I mean, Ryan's stacking up a body count of his own. I think that may have been even called out, that, there's devastation in any Soup's wake. At least now, and Ryan is still very young, but at least now there's no secrets being kept from him. He knows exactly how he came to be into this world. And he knows enough to know kind of who Homelander is now. That was sort of the thing that he took all season to realize. And even at the Christmas special, sort of stopping it and saying that the whole ideology is wrong and his mom wouldn't agree with it, was a really big moment for Ryan as a character.
It was.
Yeah,
that
for
took
sure.
courage.
Ryan definitely, he vacillates, right? Because he has these moments where he realizes, oh, wait, mom wouldn't like this. This is wrong. But then he also has moments where he's desperate for a father figure. And when he feels like Homelander is the only one who can give that to him, he's very quick to get on board with what Homelander is encouraging him to do, which I would argue under normal circumstances, Ryan would never do based on his character. Like thinking about when he has Bonnie, the production assistant, beat the ever-loving shit out of Adam, the director of his show and the director of a lot of other VOT, shows and movies. Yeah. If he weren't being encouraged to do that by Homelander, it would never even occur to him, but he goes along with it. And I feel like he's old enough to know better.
How old is he?
So, I mean, I would say he looks like he's maybe 14.
That's what I would.
I just looked on Wikipedia. He's 12 in season 4, I guess. I don't know what year this is supposed to be. You'll learn. He's been put in this impossible situation. He's still a child. I think eventually he's going to come out on the right side of this, and the right side, in my opinion, is Butcher, if he's still around.
Well, and I'm glad you brought Butcher and if he's still around up, because that is the kind of the question. I know that Butcher and Homelander are end game. You really can't have the show without either of them. So the fact that Butcher, started this season at death's door, and then also by the end of it is still at death's door, but with powers, is okay, they're stringing us along a little bit. It's kind of a slow burn. But for Ryan, Butcher was always the non-powered father figure. Like that was the appeal, was that Butcher had, you know, an axe to grind, and he's sort of lost all of his moral high ground by becoming who and what he is now. And so, you know, they're trying to send Ryan, they even told him in the finale episode, against Homelander. But then everything Butcher does the rest of this episode makes him as bad or worse. And it's just going to really confuse Ryan. And I think that, unfortunately, there's no sort of mother figure for Ryan anymore, especially after Grace presumably was killed.
Yeah, I think ultimately, though, Homelander is worlds worse than Butcher. And maybe this can be seen as a lesson in just picking the lesser of two evils. Or maybe he will just find a new family, a chosen family, if you will, and ultimately turn the page on his life.
I want to revisit that. Do you really think Homelander is worse than Butcher? Because Butcher right now has a virus that will kill every soup.
And that's a bad thing?
Well, of course it's a bad
Well,
thing. There's some good soups out there.
Here's
It's
the question.
genocide.
Do we need superheroes? I'm
They
anti-superhero.
use that word on the show. It's genocide.
Yeah. Well, let me ask y'all a question. I'm so glad that we've gotten to this point naturally in the discussion. Do y'all think Butcher is still in there? Because if you pay attention to how he's presenting towards the end of the episode, after he's gone full Kessler, he's no longer sickly anymore. I mean, how haggard he looked before, all of the grays that were in his beard before are no longer present once he's gone full Kessler and taken out Newman by literally ripping her in half. Like, so it seems to me that when he either like succumbed or made the conscious choice, I don't know which, to let the tumor, as it will, which is Kessler, take over, seems like his health woes are no longer a concern. But that makes me wonder if it's because it's not Butcher in there anymore.
That's really
Is it just
sad.
Kessler?
It's Venom.
Yeah.
Well, and so I'm so glad you mentioned that, because me and Mark did the reaction on YouTube for this episode. Mark is a huge Venom fanboy, and we spent a lot of time talking about, like, Butcher is just Venom. Like, that is who he is now.
Oh man. Well, it's weird. I the one thing I wish this series was more is like consistent about what V does, but it would be less exciting, I'll concede, if, like, I don't know what to expect when somebody who's like mortal takes V and doubles over. Like, I don't know what's going on with Ashley. I don't know what to expect is happening with Ashley. It'd be fun to speculate, but like, just based on things crawling on like their skull and like malformation, but then it turns out their power is something totally different. So like, I don't get it, you know, but at least with Butcher, yeah, no, wait, I don't get that either. But at least, I mean, it's interesting to think he'd be taken over, but I wish they would have set up maybe what that's about. I mean, we'll learn about it as soon as Butcher learns about it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of feel like Kessler was sort of like Butcher in season 1. Like, I think season 1 Butcher would have been all about soup genocide.
Yeah.
I think he evolved to the point where he realized the world's more complicated than that. And I think this whole season, Kessler has been the devil on his shoulder to be like, nope, come on back.
I've liked the way that's been done. The Kessler reveal this season was good. And just, I think you're right. Like, Kessler is giving into that part of himself that where he was most of his life. It's a shame though, because Huey was always the Lenny character. And Huey in the finale makes a direct appeal to Butcher, like, hey, we've all forgiven Victoria. We're choosing to like not do violence right now. And he goes and kills her anyway. And it's a shame. But I mean, that's Butcher. That's our Butcher.
Yeah.
I do think Butcher, to the question of has he gone full Kessler? That's an interesting thing I didn't really think about yet. It almost seemed to me like he had reached like a Zen-like state in the hospital, because he did seem different. He was calmer. He does still seem to really care about Ryan, and I don't know. I just side with him. I trust him more than I do Homelander. all things considered. Butcher got into
Yeah.
this with good intentions.
If it's Butcher and Homelander, I trust Butcher 100 times more. But what if it's Butcher and the boys? Who do you trust more?
Oh yeah, definitely not Butcher.
Yeah,
Because
Like,
true.
I think it was actually stunning to see each of the boys at their own stages in life somehow decide not to pursue like aggressive action against Newman and basically agree to help her out to get her daughter out. And I we're meant to believe it would have worked, actually, that they really all could have gotten along and there would have been some level of normalcy if Butcher hadn't killed her.
Mm-hmm.
Like they had evolved. They had come to a new, each and every one of them. I mean, Frenchie in particular with his arc this season, which I've loved, and turning himself in after, kind of try in an attempt to atone for his crimes only to get pulled back in. Every single one of them has really come to understand more about themselves in this season and also kind of forgive themselves. And then they've taken the next step of sort of forgiving Victoria and like trying to, it's that line about we have to show, in order to defeat the monsters, we have to be human.
Yeah.
We can't be monsters. That was a more elegant way of saying don't fight violence with violence, but I think it matters how they said it.
Yeah, I agreed, but unfortunately it was too late.
Butcher!
And I feel so bad for Zoe too, because Zoe, as we know, Victoria loaded her up with V at the end of last season. We've seen how her powers manifest themselves, these like weird tentacle worm wisdom tooth things that just come out of her mouth.
Looks a lot like
and
what
attack
Butcher's
people.
got going on,
Yeah,
honestly.
It does, right? And it makes me wonder if that is like a thing for people who get V when they're not babies.
That's what I don't
because
like
we know
about-
there's a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. You would think it manifests differently for sure, depending on your age.
Kind of saw it in the sheep too. Or the bunny.
The bunny.
Yeah. Yeah, the bunny
Ugh.
for sure had that like Resident Evil tentacle that burst out of it. And man, Butcher was having to confront his own mortality in that moment. Because when you saw that, you were like, oh, that's what's crawling around inside of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. We're definitely not going to go shoot up Compound V, so don't worry about us.
Speak for yourself.
Back in. Andrew's here for a good time. We'll be back in just a moment. So let's talk about Sage and Firecracker. Two new supes introduced. Both of them are inaugurated into the 7. They couldn't be more polar opposites than they are. But it's also interesting because they're both original characters to the show. They don't have any source in the comics. But I thought they were both so well done.
Perfect foil to Starlight.
Yeah.
I think in every way, former pageant girl, less trying to do of the right thing. I was surprised by Firecracker again and again and again this season and her choices, and to talk about how successful the show was in like humanizing her, because of course everyone who tries to get close to Homelander eventually has that hit them back in the face. But I really liked the sort of deep dive into the more right-wing misinformation aspect, and also like just watching Firecracker's decisions throughout the season kept me very entertained.
Yeah. When I first saw her, I was like, I know I'm not crazy, because they're literally giving her lines that are verbatim things that Marjorie Taylor Greene has said. And sort of partway through the season, Eric Kripke came out and confirmed, like, yes, in a way, she was kind of based on that kind of archetype, I suppose. But I think to Eric's point, they actually made her a lot deeper than all of that. And they really humanized her. And I mean, I felt bad for her, even though she was batshit insane.
It blows my mind that both Sage and Firecracker are unique to the show, because looking at like their impact on this season, you really couldn't do this season the way it was done without these two characters. And so that shows obviously they know what they're going for, but both those characters add so much to, like, I think the dimension of the show and the world.
To the point
I
about
agree.
pulling lines from Marjorie Taylor Greene, I didn't realize that, particularly about MTG, but we do know over the course of the series, they rip right from the headlines. Even the season 4 finale with the, racism is my fault video. Like, that is straight out of the real world. It's just crazy. It's awesome how they do that time and time again.
I mean, not to mention them poking fun at Amazon, which is, of course, the streaming service they're on, but making fun of, the whole idea of franchises and connected universes. Like, Eric, you did a much better job of this than I did, but when they did the V52 Expo, which is basically making fun of Disney's D23, I think it is. And they showed like the timeline for the next 19 phases of VCU or whatever. I was like, oh my God, they're making fun of people like me.
Right.
But they do such a good job. And they were definitely commenting on things like, targeted advertisements where they were like, if the viewer is Black, they're going to see this. Whereas if a viewer is white, they're going to see this. I mean, there is so much meta commentary about capitalism, consumerism, political and corporate, misinformation and corruption. So this show is anything but subtle. Like,
yeah,
you'll never question what they're talking about.
Yeah. And as I said in the first Boys episode that we did, what I really like about it is it's so unlike what you would get from a Marvel or DC movie, because they're also making fun of those movies and television shows too, to the point about like the timeline of the next 30 films coming out.
Well, that's since we gave Firecracker her moment. Before we move on from her, we can't forget to mention that she became Stillwell 2.0. She started taking medication to force her body to lactate so that she could breastfeed Homelander.
What was the flavor, or what was the taste of it?
Oh, cilantro.
Oh.
It was so gross.
Yeah.
She would have been killed had she not thought to do that by that point. Homelander was getting tired of her. She just gotten her ass kicked, I think, a second time. So actually, insane props to her for thinking of that, or like knowing enough to have that sort of instinct. And I guess as a reward, she is still alive currently. So
yeah, he still has a use for her, is the thing.
Ugh.
But it's interesting because like we were led to believe that with Sage, who is the smartest person alive, we were led to believe that he no longer had a use for her. But seems like the way the finale went, that may change.
Yeah.
So
she's just like, get ready for phase 2.
Right.
Yeah. Let's talk about Sage. Did she keep us guessing about her motivation all season? And what did we ultimately make of her reveal?
Yes, because there were hints from seemingly episode 6 onward that her plan was for Calhoun to be part of the plan and ultimately become president. But there weren't really any building blocks along the way. I only know it was episode 6 because that's when he was mentioned initially, Calhoun, as far as I know. And then it just kind of seems lazy to me to claim at the end that, oh, this guy was the plan all along. Maybe I missed some hints, and hindsight would be 2020, knowing how it goes. So I guess maybe I'd be interested in rewatching the season to see if I could catch more hints there. But yeah, the thing about, and I saw this point brought up online elsewhere, the thing about creating a character that claims to be the smartest person in the world is that character is only as smart as the writers in the writers' room at the Boys.
Yeah, that's very true.
That's a fault, but also, even in reality, that person might be boring because they're operating so many levels ahead of you that you can't see or therefore enjoy the journey. And so that's a balancing act. I love the conceit of having the world's smartest person in the room and also have broken bad at some point, not be, you know, totally magnanimous here. But yeah, like, I think the fact that she just came back at the end and was like, I'm back. You did everything I wanted to do, and anything that you fucked up wasn't bad enough. That part was, I used the word before, anticlimactic. But they have another chance next season. You know, it seems like to really do something with that character where it's like you feel more like you're reading a Sherlock Holmes novel than being left out of key parts of the, you know, just like unreliable narrator territory versus really feeling like it's a fantastically woven mystery.
Yeah. And I will say on all of these points, I definitely agree. Because at the point where she made the reveal and basically said, like, I just wanted to do this to see if I could do it. I mean, that made a certain amount of sense to me, because if you're that smart, you're probably really bored by everyone around you and everything happening around you. But with the implication that, yeah, everything that didn't go according to plan was actually part of the plan. Y'all just didn't realize I was playing you into serving these roles. Like, I think as a viewer, that was a little tough for me.
Yeah,
to
I agree.
Really resonate with, because it's like, okay, well, I couldn't have guessed it if that was the intention. And the fun of things like this is if you catch it and you know it before the reveal, it's revealed, and you can be like, fuck yeah, I got it right.
The breadcrumbs along the way.
Yeah,
right.
I believed, for instance, when Sage took credit for believing that Starlight would smash Firecracker's face in. You know, I believed when she was like, because that seemed fairly like predictable or reasonable that Firecracker would go too far and Starlight would get pissed. But yeah, the whole everything that wasn't part of the plan was part of it. That's too far. It seems like, actually, just as a whole, the writers this season were not interested in doing a mystery, which is fine, because I think this season is still the best of the show so far, which we can talk about. But the other mystery aspect that they didn't do is Tech Knight. Tech Knight is established in Gen V as being your Sherlock Holmes detective who would be very difficult to fool, and the stakes there could be really, really high. Instead, they turned him into a sex pervert. Well, I guess there were some elements.
He already was.
There were some elements there,
pervert.
But okay. But they made that all he is in The Boys proper. And so that annoyed me, just because he could have been a more threatening villain and not just the butt of a joke. They're like, okay, we're doing jokes with this guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, like, I don't want to be this person who's like, well, actually, in the comics, but like the whole thing about Tech Knight, about him having an obsession with holes, and like anytime he sees a hole, he's like, I must fuck that. That is very much in his character. That is very much a thing in the comics. His butler, who they actually show strangle him to death in the show, his butler in the comics walks out on him because Tech Knight tries to fuck his ear.
Oh,
and the butler was like, "That's it.
Well, but
I've had enough."
But Gen V explained that as like a tumor thing, that Tech Knight didn't always used to be that way, but due to the tumor, and so now they made it more like this was Tech Knight all along. I don't know. The inconsistency between Gen V pissed me off, actually.
Yeah,
but that's not the only thing from Gen V that pissed me off.
Well, hey, this is perfect timing. Let's talk about Gen V. Eric, you and I have talked about this quite a bit because we've both seen Gen V. Now that we've seen the whole season, do we think enough was done to fully flesh out the impacts of Gen V on the boys' universe?
So, Andrew, you have not seen Gen V, correct?
Correct. But
you have another season gap.
Oh, yeah. I know. It got like probably a 2-year wait or something before the final season comes out.
But like, you haven't, I can say now that season 4 is over, you haven't consequentially really missed anything, not having seen it going into season 4. But I think you finally friggin' will if you don't see it before season 5.
Okay.
I think that because the characters that were introduced at the V52 Expo show up again in the finale for like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
You'll know more about them if you have seen Gen V. Great.
I did figure I was looking at the Gen V characters
Yeah.
in there because they're younger and yeah.
Yeah, and otherwise there's no buildup.
Right. Who are these people? Yeah.
Right, but yeah, no. As a whole, I'm thoroughly not impressed, I guess, by the use of the Gen V characters, and because okay, I'll just hope that pays off more in The Boys season 5. If it doesn't, I'll have gotten a good episode of or a good series of TV, in Gen V is actually, I think, genuinely entertaining. But yeah, on the whole, all the characters that do show up are underutilized, and there's more characters that I like even better that don't show up at all. So that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think they're going to have to make it more clear, Eric, because we know that we're getting a season 2 of Gen V that is supposed to pick up really soon after season 4 of The Boys. And it's supposed to lead into season 5 of The Boys. So
good.
They're gonna have to establish more of a connection. I think this was actually a mistake on the showrunner's part because I think they were trying really hard not to hit people with that superhero fatigue and be like, oh, it's a connected universe is another thing I have to watch. But this is actually a case where I feel like Gen V should be required viewing for The Boys, but it's kind of disappointing that it wasn't.
It's not. And you could
of the way they did it, you know?
You could go back in season 4 and remove the characters from Gen V, and it doesn't make a difference. There's no reason why they needed to be at the one meeting in the tower, and there's no reason they need to be shown getting some of the boys in captivity at the end. There's no reason for that.
Well, for people like me, though, it's nice that I don't need to watch it to fully understand. But at the same time, on the flip side of that, in a way, it could be seen as nice for you two and other Gen V viewers, because then it's like, oh, I see those characters. That's cool. I realize there's no payoff there, but it is kind of a nice Easter egg.
Yeah, well, no, it's like the kind of people who only watch Mandalorian, and then between seasons 2 and 3 were like, why the hell is Baby Yoda back? Like, why? Like, because they didn't also watch
really poorly
the
done.
Book of Boba Fett, where the back half of that series is, yeah. So that's the problem here is, I guess, continuity. Like, if they had waited to introduce the Gen V characters until season 5 of The Boys, there might have been a more satisfying sort of splash. But then it's possible that the plot, depending on what they have planned for Gen V season 2, was so you need to know who these characters are.
Yeah.
Because they had no problem showing the boys' characters in Gen V at all. That wasn't a stumbling block. But they seem to have like a non-start of reintroducing or making the Gen V characters relevant on the boys.
Yeah. And it made it hard to understand why Sam and Kate were acting the way they were acting. Like, they were totally sycophants at this point. But like, if you didn't know anything about their characters, it might just feel kind of random.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I look forward to watching it. Gen V.
No, it's genuinely good. Like, until season 4 of The Boys, Gen V was my favorite season of The Boys. Mm-hmm. So
it is very good.
It's up there.
Well, we're going to take a quick break because I'm actually going to show Eric how they can register at Godolphin University and get their own ID and set up their own social media account through the university. So while we do that, check out these words from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. Well, obviously, there is so much that happened this season. I don't know that we're going to have enough time to go through every single little nuance, but we definitely want to hear from all of y'all at home. So please feel free to add us on whatever your social platform of choice is. Please leave comments on YouTube. You can even reach out to us via email if you're still in the 2010s. But we're going to get into some season 5 and perhaps Gen V season 2 predictions based on some of what we talked about today, some stuff that we didn't get to talk about today, and what we think might be coming next. So my first question is, what do we think is going to be the weapon to take down Homelander? Because I feel like the way that season 4 has left us is it's either Butcher, aka Kessler, Ryan, or the virus?
Mm-hmm.
Which of those things?
What if it's Ryan and, as you have noted here, Venom Butcher? I think that would be pretty cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
like a father-son team up? Well, because
Yeah.
Soldier Boy's in the picture too.
Right.
So you kind of have so many fathers. But
So many
So many toxic fathers. This show and
Two
toxic
fathers
fatherhood.
and Ryan teaming up to take down Homelander, I think would actually be pretty cool. I mean, Ryan and Butcher both have a lot of reasons to take down Homelander together. One with Butcher's wife being raped, two with her being killed. Like, there's a lot of reasons they could work together on this.
It's hard to know how Homelander will finally go down, but I'd like to think.
And he better go down.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a pretty safe assumption.
Okay.
I think we can all get on the same page.
Laura's like, I've read the comics. He's down.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they're going to do it the same way.
Yeah, they got to keep people like you surprised.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we already know that the show is not going to end the way that the comics ended. So, like, pretty much anything from here on out, it's like, it's almost like comic knowledge becomes irrelevant.
Here's my season 5 final season prediction. I want to see Homelander die a hero.
Die a
Oof.
hero.
Like saving
Okay.
Ryan or something.
Doing something selfless, maybe. I don't know. He saved Butcher. The last time Soldier Boy, like, yeah.
How about he actually saves people on a plane instead of letting them all die? That could be a heroic act for his final act.
There's still some debt on his soul for that, though. I don't know if he can make up for that. I did have like a connecting the threads thing that I wanted to throw out there. Connecting the threads is something we do on Mugglecast, of course, but I feel like there was so much emphasis this season put on Huey needing to put his dad down. And it makes me wonder, are they setting Huey up to be like a mentor of sorts to Ryan in the event that Ryan has to take out Homelander, or at least take part in taking out Homelander next season?
I like the idea, but I can't imagine Huey being like, Ryan, I know everything there is to know about putting your old man down. Because that's not the spirit in which, you know, Huey and his dad and the whole subplot. But I like the idea that the Huey and his dad subplot would feed into the future.
Yeah, to at least be a father figure to Ryan, let's say after Homelander is killed and maybe Butcher dies as well. I mean, you look at how close Butcher and Huey were working together over the course of the series as well. It could be nice if the passing of the baton was Huey and Ryan working together, following Butcher and Huey working together.
Yeah, I see more like a brotherly relationship between the two of them, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, like Ryan gets to be Lenny now.
Yeah, they start their own educational children's series with puppets. And it's got the right messaging from the start.
I mean, I think Vought would argue that they had the exact right messaging in their puppet
They'll
show.
start their own YouTube channel, I mean, and they'll get it. Never mind. They'll have a better message. Let's put it that way.
So yeah, I don't know what will finally take down Homelander, but I think it would. The virus is still in play. The delivery system unknown, because you probably couldn't just stick Homelander with something. But there's like 6 possible endings for him, and it's interesting, because none of the things I think we expected to kill Homelander even ended up killing Newman in this season. Like, it was a complete out of left field. So I think there's still things at play that they wouldn't, or that they could easily bring back that wouldn't make them feel overused. Also, is Stormfront really gone? Let's predict that real quick.
I mean,
we didn't see it happen.
Yeah, when you don't see it happen, that means that the door is open. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, she was into a lot of Nazi shit. Who knows what all she had up her sleeve. God, I loved to hate her because the character was so phenomenal, like so well written and so well acted, but I also fucking hated her.
Well, I just love that it was at season 2, episode 1. I was like, oh my God, Stormfront's the newest, best thing. And you're like, just wait.
Yeah.
And then one episode later, it was like, oh my God, this is awful. It was a fun reveal.
Honestly, the most fun thing for me throughout this, while Eric was getting up to speed, they would text me randomly and I would be like, oh, that's where they are in the show. And Eric, when you texted me about like, I really like Stormfront, I just replied with the sideways eyes being like, oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Look out.
like she just seemed like a Gen Z. No, she seemed hip. She was talking about like Twitter trends or something. She was like commenting on how Vought sucks at social media or something. And I was like, oh, this is a cool role. Almost like a non-racist firecracker. Well, we know that didn't actually happen, but that's the thing for me is the show continues to surprise me. So I also wouldn't be surprised if Homelander died a different way or doesn't die.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, they've definitely gotten us before, so it doesn't even necessarily have to be one of the obvious like 3 paths that I described for sure, but since we're talking about Ryan, do we think he's going to go full Homelander now that he knows the truth about his origin?
Like I said earlier, he had his moment lashing out with and killing Aunt Grace. So I'm optimistic that now that he's got that out of his system, okay, maybe he'll rebel a little bit more, but he's eventually going to get it all out of his system and then he'll see the light of day.
Seeing him kill the extra or the stunt man this season and be really, really remorseful about it, I don't think he's ever going to go full Homelander in terms of those mere mortals. You know, I really don't think that's in Ryan, but I do think that Ryan could be deadly, fatal to either Homelander or Butcher, maybe both.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see them killing each other by proxy of Ryan somehow, or like Ryan trying to take out one but accidentally taking out both because he's still not great at controlling his powers.
Yeah, it's giving
kind of like he did
Dumbledore
with
Grindelwald.
Becca. Yeah.
Well,
Ariana.
and it's so hinted that because of the way Ryan is born, he's the only like natural born child of a supe, I guess, that exists, and he's Homelander's like they seem to be making a point of saying that Homelander, who is Soldier Boy's son, was more powerful than he was, and then Ryan, being Homelander's son, is potentially more powerful than he is.
Right.
But it's weird having all 3 of them be in play still.
Well, again, still on Ryan for one more thing. Do we think Ryan is going to try to rescue Zoe, Victoria's daughter, from Red River? We see that's
sweet.
The orphanage she ends up in. We see a lot of this in season 2, which is where we're introduced to Cindy, who is someone who makes an appearance again in the finale of this show and takes part in capturing and separating the boys.
I would like to see that. I think it'd be nice to see some of the kids, in this case, Ryan and Zoe, working together to right the wrongs of their elders.
Yeah, I also, who else cares at all about Zoe? Besides Ryan, they were shown to have a good relationship earlier in the season, and I wouldn't have even thought otherwise. I would have expected Zoe to kind of be written out of the series.
And this is something you could see him doing on his own accord. Right now, he does not want to be told what to do or whose side to pick. So this is something that's kind of like his own mission.
He could start his own super team.
Ooh.
Just from people who are in Red River too.
Yeah, no, I think that would be really cool because there are so many different superhero teams and they mention them offhand throughout the show's full run. But yeah, it'd be very cool. I have a theory, and this might sound kind of wacky, but very similar. Eric, you mentioned we didn't see Stormfront die. We didn't actually see Ambrosius, the Deep's tentacled lover, die. Tilda Swinton did the voice. So well done. We didn't actually see Ambrosius die. We saw what appeared to have led to her death, but we don't actually see it. And my headcanon is that she managed to escape, get back into the ocean, and tell all of her marine aquatic friends what a horrible person the Deep is. And I think that after he's been directly and indirectly responsible for so much sea life death over the course of this series, that Ambrosius and her friends are going to take out the Deep. next season.
Cool idea. I just don't know how she gets out because she was suffocating in that alleged death scene. Like what? The fire sprinklers were activated in the room and that kept her alive and then she escaped.
Was she planning for it somehow?
Yeah, she got a backup tank in that closet. This is hard to figure out how she would get out. But I like the idea of the creatures of the sea striking back.
You know that this show would absolutely have a sequence where the whole marine life in the ocean go after the deep.
Yes.
That would 100% happen.
Yeah, after the flying V'd up sheep this season, I think it's totally possible. But yeah, I think like they were not squeamish about showing Timothy's demise. So I just think it's interesting that we didn't actually see Ambrosius take her final, would it be breath?
Yeah.
I don't know how this works for octopi.
We didn't see Maeve this season.
No.
Do you
I think that's so interesting?
Yeah.
Will she come back?
I think so. Maeve's on that journal.
Yeah. Yes.
That's
the thing. Hint. Why would she have the Maeve journal if that wasn't intended to be
all part of her
Easter
plan.
egg?
Maeve's been part of the plan too all along.
What do we think Ashley's going to do? Because we don't get to see what the result of her transformation is. I mean, I think we can clearly tell that this has been her plan the entire time. Like, when stuff goes tits up, I'm going to go inject myself with V when I have no other options. But apart from seeing like a lot of malformation happening, we don't really know what happens with her.
I think Ashley as a rule doesn't have a plan. She should. Everyone who's that close to Homelander and certain death should have a plan, but we see her regretting getting that other news anchor killed earlier in the season. And, you know, when she ran kind of desperate to inject herself with V in the finale, that seemed to be the only thing she could do to maybe survive what might be the next couple of minutes. Homelander kind of seemed to indicate that he saw her running off and would have gone after her, but just didn't. I don't think she has a plan. So it depends on what her powers are, I guess.
She's always kind of seemed erratic. So I can totally believe that she wouldn't have a plan right now other than let me shoot myself up and hopefully that'll keep me alive.
I hope it's cool power. I hope it's one we haven't seen before.
Seems creepy thus far, but we'll see.
Yeah.
So
Mark's theory is that it's going to be some like Hulk-esque
that'd be
power.
Cool.
So from if that ends up being the case, she will henceforth be known as Smashley.
That's funny.
I feel like that theory is based on how fun it is to say Smashley.
Yeah.
Which, to be clear, that's not a criticism. I think it's brilliant.
Do we think that she'll team up with the boys to take down Homelander, though? Or is she going to be like a rogue agent and just out for herself?
I think she's going to need some help. So,
yeah,
I could see her teaming up with the rest of the boys. And I think, you know, she's got an axe to grind much just like the rest of them do. So why not team up?
I think she'll do it for those lost. I think ultimately she will finally be strong enough to lash out against those that have just terrified her from day one at Vought. She's made some bad choices. Some people have died as a result of her choices specifically, but this whole season showed her with that sort of alliance with A-Train. And, where they were both the leak in some ways.
Speaking of A-Train, are we ever going to see him again?
I'd like to.
Yeah. I like his redemption arc. I totally thought he and MM were going to die because it really felt like they were setting up to close the loop on both characters and have them die in whatever January 6th stuff was going to happen. But that was another way they surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
Is Kimiko going to be fully verbal in season 5 now that we've seen her break her nonverbal streak?
I almost missed it. Because so many people shout in this show. I mean, like so many people are like, no, when something goes wrong. The fact that it was Kimiko, I'm so glad they focused on her a little bit longer because then I was like, what's happening? Oh, wait, she's speaking. It didn't hit me at first. I was like, not ready for it.
It would be nice to see her grow fully verbal. I feel like there have been multiple Kimiko death fake outs across the course of the series so
Yeah.
far. One happened in the season 4 finale too, and I'm tired of them.
That's her power, though. Like, I mean, she's super strong, but her other power is super healing.
That's what I'm talking about as far as repetitive powering, because every supe is like slightly stronger. Every supe is slightly more resistant to injury. Every supe has like faster healing. But like Kimiko's thing is that she can get deeply injured and turn around. So it's like, it's not clear when it's just like, I was surprised that the shapeshifter wasn't that like Starlight just left her after like choking her out, that they didn't like dismember her, relocate parts of her body to like 5 different states. I was like, she could come back, because that's what
uneven.
Supes do. Yeah. The way in which they have to make sure certain supes are dead versus not with other supes, it feels like a huge gaping, like just whatever. And so with Kimiko, like Andrew's saying, like, you just don't know whether you should feel worried or not.
And the way it's shot, I think, is intentional to make you wonder if she's actually going to come back or not, which is just like, well, you're killing the stakes in part because of this power, and you doing it
like
again
too many
and again.
fake outs.
Yeah.
Until they finally kill her, at which point we're going to be waiting for her to get up, and she's not.
I guess
it's going to be horrible.
Yeah.
It's what do you do with a character like that? Yeah,
and also
it's hard to say.
I don't know if we've discussed it here, but it was nice to see Kimiko and Frenchie just be friends. Like, did it have to end up romantic after all?
I like that take, Andrew. I like that take. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I know we don't have too much time to get into this, but I definitely have feelings about Frenchie and Kimiko's story. Like, each of their individual stories, fine. But how they chose to bring them together, to me, felt weird. The pacing was off. It was like something happened off screen between seasons that led to Kimiko in the beginning being like, you and me were never going to happen. And that felt really jarring as someone who's been with these characters for a while now. And I don't know, it just felt like a really convoluted path to get them back together when, like, you could have started out the season with them being together and it would have made sense.
Yeah. Well, like, so with Kimiko saying, remember when I told you to go be with that man, it was only because you wanted to be somebody better than me. That was retconning like what was actually a really nice character development moment, or it was erasing essentially the growth where both characters have said we wouldn't be good together, and literally wishing an ex genuine happiness with somebody else romantically is a huge growth moment for anybody. So seeing that represented on the show was nice, but now I guess it's just undone because she had some self-doubt and now she's worked through it. She's ready to accept Frenchie into her heart again.
Well, we know that there are many, many thoughts and takes about what this season meant, what might be coming in season 5 and in season 2 of Gen V. So again, please be sure to let us know what you're thinking on social, particularly in those YouTube comments. We are trying to grow our presence on YouTube, and that would be a super helpful way for us to accomplish that. So thank you so much in advance to everyone who's engaging with us over there. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to share a couple of Easter eggs with y'all that I think you should keep bookmarked for season 2 of Gen V, season 5 of The Boys. First of all, the VOT International YouTube channel. This is the official VOT YouTube channel, and they'll put out commentary and like ads and commercials throughout the season of the show airing. So it's like very meta. There's one that I linked that has Ashley talking about the flying sheep being fake news, and that's not a real thing that happened. So please stay calm. They have lots of content like that. There's a mini show they have on there called Getting Deep with the Deep, and it's the Deep sharing his really crappy philosophical thoughts.
That's great. I love the synergy here.
And then actually Opera GX created their own version of a VOT browser. It's literally called Browser by VOT. So it gives you a lot of access to puzzles and more bonus content that you can dig into from the show. But I think what's really interesting about it is you can register as a student at Godolphin University so that you can get access to the social feed where you can see posts from characters in the boys' universe commenting on what's happening in the show at that time. So I pulled an example. This is a post by Homelander from the finale of Gen V, where he says, the tragic events at Godolphin University incited by 4 woke radicals proves that our fight for freedom is far from over. Thankful for the brave efforts of the true guardians of Godolphin, Kate Dunlap and Sam Riordan. You two are the real heroes. So there will be lots of like meta commentary like this. So you can definitely download that Opera GX browser. There's just a ton of fun little Easter eggs in there. Well, thank you all so much for listening. Eric, Andrew, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I know that both of you are converts because neither of you had watched The Boys before I started raving about it and was like, somebody needs to watch this show because I'm talking about it on What the Hype and I don't want to talk about it alone. So thank you so much for
our pleasure
embarking on this
so
journey
glad.
with me. I know it was a lot.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did. I'm glad I've seen this
Yeah, me too.
show. It continues to surprise me.
Absolutely. Well, does a friend or family member need to be convinced to watch The Boys? Be sure to share our primer episode from early June with them. And when they're caught up, share this episode too. And let them know that Homelander is coming for them if they don't give it a chance. So they really don't have a choice.
Whoa.
That's what I told Eric and Andrew. And that's why they're here.
We were like, who's Homelander? All right, we'll try it anyway.
Yeah.
And you can also let your friends and family know that What the Hype walks through every aspect of pop culture each week. We are a new show, so we do need your support. First of all, please, please, please follow us in your podcast app and leave a review. This is going to help make the show a success. Also, please subscribe to What the Hype podcast on YouTube and check out our other content there. This is all super important in the early days of the show. You can also stay connected with us. We're also on TikTok, Twitch, and Instagram as What the Hype Podcast. On X, we are What the Hype Show, and our website is whatthehypepodcast.com. Finally, if you want to email us about anything, mostly anything, you can do that at whatthehypepodcast@gmail.com. But that is the hype on The Boys Season 4. Super excited for Gen V and Season 5 of The Boys.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.